Thank you to whoever hit record. I am terrible at remembering to do that. So for those watching in the future, back into our specific work plan for that CEDR's funding, looking at goals and objectives for what we were hoping to put under the catch-all administration project. The specific housing objectives were related mostly to the housing needs assessment process. One of them was focused on being able to participate in that planning process as it was happening, and being able to act as sort of economic development stakeholders to provide input and feedback into those plans related to the continued development of housing. And then tactic 2 is thinking about, once that plan sort of gets into the recommendations and adoption stage, this group may or may not have a role with presenting some of those implementation action items. Maybe some of them would be targeted to regional groups like us for implementation, or maybe they would be things where this group sort of acts as a way of disseminating that information and those recommendations back to all of your organizations and municipalities, so that everybody can sort of be on the same page as far as what these regional housing documents are suggesting for implementation action items. Most of the deliverables related to that would be things that are either going directly into or coming directly out of the housing needs assessment document itself, whether that's, you know, sort of compiled information of the feedback that we've given, or for some of the policy recommendations coming out of it, you know, the presentations, the handouts, the letters of support or advocacy that may be generated on the back end. Objective 2 was focusing on work, or I guess I do want to say one last thing before I move on. A lot of our conversation had focused on sort of the fact that different municipalities have different housing needs, and, you know, while the region basically needs housing at all points in this housing spectrum, you know, different communities would want some of the flexibility to focus on, you know, whether it was workforce housing, whether it was a community that had a large supply of workforce housing and needed some market rate or luxury housing to have a balanced housing stock. Yeah, I tried to accommodate that flexibility and sort of leave open some opportunities for people to, you know, still be part of this same conversation, even if your individual sort of goals and priorities were slightly different. So I hope the way that I've phrased that retains enough of that flexibility in your mind. Objective 2 was looking at workforce development. And this was one where we are sort of talking about a very specific project that would be a separate task as a standalone for how we might be able to address this. So when we were fine-tuning that list of sort of catch-all items, we didn't really have one that fell under workforce housing or workforce development, sorry, because we were advancing that other more specific project. So this is one where I've inserted just a general catch-all that might give us some flexibility if some other smaller things came up over the course of the next year. But I didn't really have anything specific in mind. For deliverables, I also noted that we will be working on that specific project proposal, probably submitting these as 2 separate submissions so that we can go ahead and get this one in before the end of 2021 is my hope. And we can circle back in January with that separate proposal to get that into the system. Objective 3 is again, a catch-all for the infrastructure related items. So tactic 1 was thinking about transportation specifically, inclusive of multimodal transportation. That was something where we thought that connections to some of the MPO planning processes and programs would be things that we could facilitate in general. Specific research and potential applications for funding that would support electric vehicles. That's something that has probably come up in a variety of funding sources at this point, whether it's some of the more general like congestion mitigation programs, whether it is the Volkswagen settlement that still has some money available from a few years ago, or I think there are some set asides in ARPA for funding programs like this as well. So that might be something that we can research as a group. And then the third tactic that we had brought forward was investigating and advocating for opportunities to share intermunicipal infrastructure more generally, whether the focus was resiliency, was being able to better support multifamily housing or commercial development in more locations. Yeah, that is something that we've talked at several points about investigating further. And then finally, objective 4 was the quality of life component, that we were thinking of specific tactics such as those marketing assets to sell the Seacoast regional quality of life. That was something that a small group had previously been working on, and as we sort of discussed last week, there looked like there was going to be a lot of duplication of effort between what we were doing and what BEA was doing. So I gave Darren a call this week, and we thought it made sense to roll that in as a tactic under the catch-all, so that we can spend a little bit of our time coordinating with BEA's process, supporting them, providing input into what we might like to see their materials look like, but that it no longer needs to be its own separate funding proposal. Tactic 2, continue to support community efforts that encourage quality development and public amenities in or near downtowns and village centers. And then the final tactic was work related to the official New Hampshire Seacoast Greenway, whether that is continuing to advocate for funding and development of the official Greenway itself, or thinking about ways that we can sort of tie additional projects into that. So I think I'm going to pause right there. There is a little bit more to this, but I guess I'll stop for a second and see if there are questions or comments on anything I've put together so far. Robin?
First of all, James, thank you. You did a terrific job with this. And second of all, with the appreciation that too many cooks spoil the broth, in terms of formatting, I have sat on this selection committee 100 million times. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but there will be several people reviewing this. And so with that in mind, anytime I submit something to the state, first of all, I always do page numbers, topic and page numbers inserted at the bottom, so people around the table can refer. But second of all, just in terms of design, I would, at the end of your introduction paragraph, I would list the 1, 2, 3, 4 objectives, so they're very clear in one word. And then when you say objective 1, I would do hyphen Joe Blow, objective 2, hyphen Jane Doe. So one word, again, thinking in terms of, and I know you sit on a million of these committees yourself, but a team of people, kind of heads in all different parts of this, walking through it to make it more elementary, even more elementary. But I think I want to say, I think you did a great job, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the feedback, Robin. Other comments, questions? Paul?
Yeah, to echo what Robin said, that this is a great start and good meat of where we've been talking about for the past couple of meetings that at least I participated in. One observation though about objective one, I can appreciate you trying to address the totality of our communities and their different places of where they may be. I'm concerned the tone of it though, in the way you've approached that, almost comes off like as an economic development strategy, we're promoting housing development versus promoting housing as an economic development strategy, if you follow what I'm saying. I don't know that necessarily all communities would agree that, yeah, the development community or the construction community is necessarily the target or the beneficiary of this effort. It's more all of our employers need more housing, and therefore, as an economic development strategy, we need to promote workforce housing and those sort of things. This comes off as if we're just promoting housing as one element of a larger economy. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but that's how I initially took this. Housing for its housing sake versus for the benefit of the employers.
I mean, I guess I can sort of see where you're coming off. I guess I would wonder if others are seeing that distinction, because I think to a certain extent, housing for housing, I would argue housing for housing's sake is necessary for the benefit of all of our employers. And I think that there are probably multiple ways to approach that. And I think that something that we have sort of acknowledged, it seems, at least my impression has been that we understand the direct nexus between needing all of this housing and supporting our employers. But sort of in order to get to that place, whatever argument results in the development of adequate housing is probably a good argument to use. Does that make sense?
I think part of the problem is we're a little myopic because we know what we're talking about and what we mean by this. I think others who may have other objectives may misconstrue and distort this if this document were to be part of some wider dissemination. Obviously, once it's part of a grant application, is public information, but
Yep.
I don't know that all communities would sit here and say, yeah, we just want more housing. Because many different communities have a different development pattern. And as you said, some of them already have plenty of workforce housing and others don't. And that inequity is manifest itself in the situation that we found ourselves. But I wouldn't want our goals to be muddled in, oh, you're just in the developer's pocket to build more housing. And that's you're supportive rather than it. No, that may be an outcome, but from an economic development strategy, this is necessary. And it's not just because we want housing developers to make more money. It's because employers need places for their employees to live.
Yeah, and we can look at that and make some refinements to focus in on kind of the impetus of why we're calling housing out for this specific application. James, we have some additional hands up. We have Michelle and then Sean.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Just real quick, I know this is separate from the housing subject, so I apologize if I'm straying too early when we're still on this topic, but I just wanted to volunteer a huge packet memo that I have that breaks out a lot of the new infrastructure funding programs, some of them are new, some of them are existing. I mean, just to name a few, for example, there's a National Infrastructure Project Assistance Funds, which helps to alleviate freight charging and those types of stations, protect grants for projects that can show resiliency, active transportation grants for things that can show, like for sidewalks and paths and facilities, SMART grants for new innovation in infrastructure. These are all available for municipalities to apply for and local groups. So it's not necessarily you have to go through the state for these. So I'm going to send you this compilation. Of course, we're still waiting for federal guidance on a lot of these, but that should get a lot of the legwork out of the way for one of your objectives. Of course, still the state has a good chunk coming to them as well. So you know those pathways very well already, but I just want to give you a heads up on what competitive grants are coming out of the infrastructure package. I know for the workforce objective too, there are a couple lines in there in the Build Back Better, but that we don't know the fate of that bill. It's not looking super great, but we're going to tackle that in the start of the new year, and hopefully we can make some headway with Manchin, but unless we can turn him, we don't know how that bill's going to go. So, but I know there's that would have workforce funding for certain partnerships and with employers and you name it, and local education if we're able to get that across the finish line. But let me send this to you by email, James, and if you can forward it out to the whole group, it's available for sharing.
Yeah, we'll do. Thanks,
Thank
Michelle.
you.
Thanks, Michelle.
And Sean?
Yeah, James, thanks. So just listening to the conversation and you know, I can definitely see both sides, and I'm looking at the objective one, and Jen, I think you alluded to, you know, tweaking the language. What popped into my brain is it's, you know, at the last line in the housing spectrum to maintain an adequate workforce to support all employers, right? I mean, we all know that that's a primary issue for employers, and I mean, that makes it explicit. Am I using that word right? You know, this is the reason why we're doing this, because this is what we're hearing from all employers in every community on the Seacoast and really across New Hampshire, right? So my 2 cents.
Paul, does that help alleviate your concerns with this one objective?
Certainly it clarifies it significantly. It's amazing what a couple well-placed words can do. I'd also, maybe there's a little in tactic one, it needs to be a little more refinement there too, because a lot of people read a lot of things into that regional housing and needs assessment. And so we need to be careful, again, how we align. I think it's a good role for us to participate in, but again, from an employer's supportive standpoint versus the process as a whole. Which has various political leanings.
So we have some vested self-interest in that one.
Yeah.
Understand.
Understand.
But I know that we as a regional planning commissions, you know, as we kind of dive into our regional housing needs assessments, we do have funding from BEA to do those. We are going to be, as we kind of round into the new year, reaching out to as many different stakeholder groups as we can to make sure that we are truly capturing you know, the voices of our communities and our regions in articulating what that need is. And I know that we're looking to you all as an important a voice in that process. So.
Warren?
Thank you. We talk about objective 2 a little bit, because that seems like it's there are really no tactics involved in that. We spent some time over the past few days discussing this, the subcommittee, and we do have a bunch of tactics that I think we would like to add, and we can work on that. Certainly marketing through, we thought short videos potentially, collaboration with all of the partners, PD, professional development and training for small business employers, And also understanding the major industries in New Hampshire, what the price elasticity is relative to pricing and how that correlates with an increase in pay scale. So we do have some tactics. We even thought about, we talked last week about spending, and I think it's clear that SRPC needs $25,000, and that leaves $25,000 left to spend of the $50,000 CEDR grant, and we haven't. That's not a part of this package yet. So we would like to discuss hiring a marketing agency or a marketing professional to help us put all this together and get this out.
Yeah, Warren, I think I was basically, I didn't want to steal your thunder. My understanding was all of those things that you were discussing were basically going to be coming through as a separate proposal. So I sort of put a placeholder here for if there were things that fell out of that project, or there were things that we think of, 5 months from now, and it's too late to put them into that proposal, that it would give us a little bit of flexibility, but I didn't want to duplicate everything that we would essentially be putting into this format for that separate project for the remaining funds. So I just sort of alluded to the fact that all of the things that that group is discussing would be coming probably in the next couple of weeks as we continue to refine that scope, and we'll put in a separate funding request for that component.
So will that request go through CEDR, or would that be separate?
It would go through the same submission portal that we would put through this. My understanding was we were still contemplating that SRPC would be the fiscal agent for any of that pass-through money to go to hiring a marketing professional or whoever else. So essentially we would be submitting a second grant proposal in a couple weeks. The portal seems pretty quick and easy. Like I said, the two things that I printed for you are basically everything that you have to put sort of detailed narrative or anything into. Everything else is either I'm checking a box, I agree to abide by the terms and conditions, or I'm just entering SRPC's information to draw the money. So if you wanted to even use some of my materials as a template in your next discussions as you continue to pull your ideas together, feel free.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I guess just a logistical question. I mean, Warren, how close are you guys? If you're like a day or two away from having yours pulled to, your material pulled together, Teresa, should we wait until January 4th and have everyone review the next batch and put it all in together, or still put it in as two separate submissions?
Not to disparage anybody, but we're over the holidays. So I would say if you can put in as much as you can on the first run.
Okay.
Because getting everybody together and reviewing all the materials, kind of like try to get as much done on the first go round as possible.
Okay. Because, looking at that application template, just for everyone else here, we can submit multiple projects under one application. So like what we're looking at right now is one project. So the piece that Warren has been working on would be project 2. Okay.
All right, any other comments, questions on this as far as I've gotten? Otherwise, I can walk you real quick through the rest, and then we can turn the page over to the workforce.
Well, so James, just a question. In terms of if you were going to send it in as is there the target to do it now or on January 4th, or what's our window here?
So I guess we can circle back to that at the end once we've chatted about your stuff. It sounds like if we can get the workforce development together to sort of sign off on it on January 4th, that we'd prefer to wait. If we think that that's going to take maybe towards the end of January, maybe we'll go ahead and submit this one and submit a second project for that money.
I think it's a function of what kind of detail we need. In other words, if we have a budget and we submit a budget, do we need to have discussed this, put this out to bid to marketing agencies, or can we just put in a number that we feel is fair to get the project done?
Teresa? I mean, on that level of detail, I mean, I can go based on my assumptions. We can do some estimates of what the costs would be and put that in on the budget, and then we would do procurement after the award.
Yeah, Jen's got it right. She's used to dealing with basically James and Jen. They would be acting as a subcontract for that. So I think it says that in the application. So our decision, their decision, it's not me, on the grant monies is very high level, and then it's just relying on the CEDR and SRPC acting as the fiscal agent to make sure that all the T's are crossed, I's dotted. So I think she's right. Cost estimates, it's more BEA is looking at signing off on the tactic or the strategy, and we leave it to all of the experts to sign off on the implementation. Right, Jen?
Yep. Yeah. So between everybody on a subcommittee, I think, we could talk amongst ourselves, but, even with the holiday, I know I'm taking the whole week off next week. There's a good chance that we could get this done by January 4th. I would like that. Just get it out all together. That would be my preference, but Sean is chairing the subcommittee. I'm not. So.
I would say shoot for January 4th. Most of the people that are on your decision-making team or selection team are in and out because of the holidays. So no rush to anyone. Take your time,
Great. Yeah, I think we should go for the 4th.
Okay. So to wrap this part up real quick, we did also want to make sure that we mentioned some of the discrete project tasks that we discussed, specifically so that we could tie, pursuit of these tactics and deliverables to the budget items that I talked about last time. So that's continued facilitation of these meetings, some of the quarterly coordination meetings to make sure that we're planning out, agendas and sort of coordinating things in advance, direct implementation of some of those priority actions. So implementing the maps, the letters of advocacy, et cetera. Grant writing, if we were to find additional opportunities, especially once we can take a look through Michelle's list and see whether we could go after any of those additional programs, and then align for SRPC to administer the funds, do reporting back to BEA, et cetera. The project timing, I left very general for these as covering the next calendar year. And I think that something that we'll do at some of those quarterly coordination meetings and early in the next year would be laying out sort of what we have the capacity to tackle when, and set a schedule for ourselves. Measurements of success. This is something that BEA is asking for explicitly, and I think they're thinking about how do they do the reporting back on their end for ARPA requirements. So I was including information. Some of it was things that I've already shown you in terms of the total partners that we've engaged with these calls, the funds that we've been able to leverage if we secure additional funding, or talking about the fact that SRPC is kicking in some of our CARES funding, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I think I have a disclaimer in here somewhere that this is funds that are leveraged, not matching funds, and we understand the difference, and we're going to be explicit about it, sort of tracking that difference and keeping things in separate buckets. And then just action item deliverables, showing some of those work products related to the things that we accomplish over the course of the year. and being able to look back on everything that we've done. And then finally, it asks about vendors used. So we know that SRPC is going to be the project lead on this, and we're anticipating some pass-through funding already to at least REDC and RPC. I think for the other project, when you get to that point, we would want to talk about, we've secured our bid estimates, and we would do formal procurement for a suitable contractor at a later date. So any final questions on this? All right, seeing none, I will assume, unless anybody sends me anything else, we'll take a look back at some of the language in task 1. Otherwise, we'll assume this is sort of in the parking lot and ready to go for January. So Sean, do you want to take it away and talk about the workforce side?
Sure, James. And I don't know if you can pull up my notes, or if that's something you could do for me.
Would you rather share yourself, just so you
Sure.
have the control?
Yes.
All right,
I
you
would.
should be able to.
Okay. So bear with me. Been a while since I've done this. All right. How's that?
Looking good.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, so to Warren's point, we and Nancy and I guess Nancy O'Connor joined us, and Barb. So we had some good conversation, and I feel like we're in this vein of really focusing on employers and the whole education piece. And Warren had a great quote in here, which is hiring is now a marketing play. So that really drives us to kind of setting up an infrastructure to help employers kind of market what they have to offer to potential employees. And so our job is to really kind of pull some information together. I'm not going to read this all to you, but it's here, and James shared it. But the idea is to look for some best practices. We kind of know what the recurring themes are for employers, and then educate employers on how they can attract the workforce that they need. I think what we all talked about is our experience as employers. They don't necessarily know how to do anything different other than put "we're hiring" signs up on the highway, or offer signing bonuses. And we all feel there's a lot more to your workforce. A, you have to attract them. B, you have to retain them. And C, you have to train them and show them a career path. And I know I talked a little bit about this last week. So, I mean, it all kind of fits into economic development. Our employers are not going to grow and thrive unless they have the workforce that they need. So I think we're all, as a subgroup, clear on our tactics and the education piece, and then turning that into a kind of a marketing infrastructure for employers. We educate them, we show them how to market, and then we provide some tools, whether it's videos or certain channels for reaching the marketplace. So that's kind of the umbrella. And I agree with Warren's comments earlier. I feel like we can pull this together and put enough in there to show this is what this effort is, and this is the specific project as part of the overall CEDR's request. So I'll open it up for questions or comments from my team.
So it seems like sort of the conversation has reached a point where it sounds like you are mostly agreed on the tactics, and maybe the piece that needs to get across the finish line is identifying and sort of laying out some of the specific deliverables that would be propose to address those tactics?
Yes, based on, going through the format that you put together, I would agree.
Okay.
Does that sound right, Warren, to you?
Yeah, very much. I agree with everything you said, Sean. Yeah, we're gonna come up with the tactics. And I don't think that's gonna be a lot of work. We've done the work. We just have to, get rid of some of the detail and provide information on more on a broader framework.
Yeah.
Sean and Warren, I don't know if folks can hear me. I'm driving. So just a curiosity question. It seems like there could be an opportunity to provide some training, online training for employers on those strategies for recruiting, retaining workforce. Could that be something that one of the tactics that's written into the budget that training is provided? I don't know if training exists on that, but it seems like something that employers might be interested in. I know my institution would be. So.
Yeah, Charlie, thanks for your question. Nancy Carmer had provided some additional thoughts, and I believe there was a training piece in there. And I would agree.
Okay.
I think, training is part of education. And so if that's going to be our, kind of our driver, then we need to make that education and training available in the format that the employer can take it, right? So online and at their schedule makes a lot of sense.
And also we're thinking short videos, not 1 hour Zoom meetings. We're thinking, not that there's anything wrong with 1 hour Zoom meetings. Love this meeting. Short videos, to the point, success stories, best practices, different short videos for each specific area of
almost like go to YouTube to do a how to, how to change my whatever headlight. I don't know.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah.
TikTok?
I guess if we have a TikTok expert around.
But we need what social media is the market interested in, I guess, is part of what the marketing company will provide us with, where to put all that.
Yeah, but once we have these assets, these digital assets, we can use them over and over again. We can do different ways, find different channels to get them out to employers, invite employers in, have virtual events, have hopefully live events at some point. Other questions, comments? Any other thoughts, James? Any concerns or questions from you?
No, I think it seems like it's going in a good direction, and if the group likes the direction it's going in, I'm certainly supportive. I think what I can do is, Sean, I can send you sort of everything that I pulled together for the application, so you can at least see in context, what form this needs to go into. But for all intents and purposes, I think the vast majority of the project specific stuff is in what I already sent out to the group. And that's not a prescribed format per se. That was just me sort of taking the specific questions that the system was prompting me for, in terms of what are your objectives, your tactics, your metrics, and your timeline, and sort of turning them into an outline. So
great.
Michelle?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I apologize, I'm kind of reading through this document that you emailed as well, which is you're showing on the screen. So if it's in here, I apologize. But I recently had a fascinating meeting with a company called Red River Technologies out of Claremont. They're a large national company as well. And they also target their workforce development. So I met with their workforce development director, and they also target on workforce pipelines, starting with education, earlier education. And then they have adult reskilling and like hiring now initiatives as well. So also looking at targeting like a long-term game as well as like the immediate recruitment as well. So I don't know if that's something to just keep in the back of the mind. Maybe it's a phase 2 of a plan like this, but it was interesting how they do a lot of their programs. And a lot of it doesn't necessarily have to be done locally. Of course, they do a lot locally. They contribute a lot of equipment to maker spaces and community colleges, as well as elementary schools and high schools. But a lot of their programs are done nationally as well, trying to, since our workforce may not necessarily have to live here to work here. So that's another way to look at it. So if there's any way he's just more than willing to work and share what they've been doing with others around the state. I'm happy to make any introductions to him as well. It's just a thought. I'm targeting the workforce demographics that you're looking for.
Michelle, I'll just say, I know Charlie's got his hand up, but I'll just say that we talked about this. There are the larger employers like a Red River, they can do these things. They have staffs. I mean, the fact that they have a workforce development office is pretty amazing, right? Because that's, you know, you have HR, you have recruiting, but for them to recognize that we need a whole pipeline of our workforce, and it's bringing them in, upskilling them, keeping them. I mean, this is all, that's pretty advanced stuff in my opinion. And what we talked about as a group is your larger employers, the Lonzas of the world and others, they can do these things, but that's not the bulk of our employers, right? I mean, can we share some of those best practices that a large company has with a company that doesn't have 5 people in their HR department? They got one person trying to do HR. What can they do to attract that workforce? So I think that was some of the distinction we had.
It was so true. That was that was definitely the basic goal of the meeting, is how can we replicate what they're doing in a whether it's funding available, or can it be some other type of entity that administers these programs that other employers can just plug into, because like you said, they don't have someone dedicated to workforce development specifically. So they had some interesting models and concepts and suggestions that I brought back to our legislative team here as well, just to see how we can continuously evolve this. And we're always looking for feedback from all of you as well on what types of programs. I don't know if it's going to happen in the short term or long term or ever, but it's good for us to always be thinking strategically and how we can add flexibility to existing workforce development funding. So, but I think they have some great models. They took the lead on a lot of this, but they also did a lot of this in partnership with the local city of Claremont. Some of them are done with the municipality. Some was done with the River Valley Community College. So that's some programs they're taking a huge role in as well. So it's interesting what they've done. So I think, like you said, I think in this document, I see gathering testimony and speaking with others that have done things. Why reinvent the wheel on programs that have been proven successful in other ways? There are some contacts just up in our state that are doing some very innovative things, and I'm happy to make any introductions. And I know you all are very connected as well.
Great. Thank you. That's great.
If I could just add to that, this is a small sliver of the problem, but related. UNH has a pretty poor retention rate, so our students graduate, and the majority of them leave the state. And what we found, actually in partnership with Red River, we piloted an internship program. What we found is that if a student has a meaningful internship or some sort of experiential learning experience with an employer, their likelihood of staying in the state is something like 3 or 4 times higher. So one of our strategies, I think, should be, and again, it's only a sliver of the problem, should be helping our undergraduates find opportunities to work with employers, because that's going to help retain them after post-graduation.
Great feedback. Warren?
Yeah, and then that's not only true in the college, on the university level, Charlie, that's true in high schools and even middle schools, because I have a client who is putting together an internship program, and they're in 3 different school districts right now, some relatively large school districts such as Exeter, whereby they are putting together parents, students, the school district, and employers. So this is especially true for the trades, whereby, what is the interest they do? They do an assessment as to their interest and their skill level, and then they go from there. So, that's one of the videos I was going to ask my client to present at in some of our professional development. So, yeah, there are multiple industries that would impact all the way from middle school through the university level. We're looking at long-term solutions as well as short-term solutions, of course.
Michelle, is that hand up again?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think Warren's spot on. It's, I think a lot of career pathways and the looking, like you mentioned, we're planning for the future. It's going to have more emphasis on career dexterity and flexibility. A lot of work employed positions now that we're looking for may not exist 5 years from now. How do we reskill them into other positions in a way that doesn't require a lot of expense or time? And that's the same thing with students working their way through middle and high school. If they're gathering skills, a lot of these programs are starting in the middle school level. That was a middle school that we did a STEAM lab. It's a STEM lab with arts. We did a ribbon cutting for that up in Claremont. Those kids are getting advanced education in these specializations. Let's say you're in high school now, and you want to enter these fields, you're joining students that already have had a head start in this. So it's like, it's harder and harder for them to catch up in some ways. So really it's being able to add that career flexibility and dexterity and also having faster career pathways. People can enter the workforce, whether they're gaining credit through high school partnerships, college credits, so they can condense and consolidate and enter the workforce faster. I think that's going to be more of a priority into the future, and that's going to require some pretty clever partnerships to pull those off in an effective way. So.
Thank you all. This is getting me very excited. In a prior career, I was a teacher and I did my student teaching in an experiential learning sort of a curriculum. So I honestly did not expect that would become relevant to my future career again once I made the switch. And it shows that you never know.
Right.
So some fun stuff. We are coming up on 10 o'clock. So any final thoughts? Otherwise, it sounds like Sean, your group is going to try and convene one last time before January 4th, or send some materials back on back and forth on email to try and get us some similar deliverables that we could maybe submit.
Yes. Yep.
Robin?
Sorry, I'm so sorry to late. Sean, just to offer to you and your group food for thought. I just worry with this subject matter that sometimes we become too self-focused, where we're focused on our community and what I call the other focus. And in final statements, I think it's really important that it's couched in what I call the "so that" clause. These, especially small owner-operated businesses, need a statement as to why this matters to them and how it can improve their bottom line. I don't know that a lot of them are at a place where they have the luxury of thinking of a larger community and the larger elements that we talked about. They're going to be thinking about, why should I do this? And what is it going to cost me? And what are the benefits to my small business when I have no time to even eat, let alone do this? So I think I call it the "so that" clause, to open with: do this so that, do A so B, so that B happens.
Yeah, no, I think we got really energized around the fact, Robin, that if employers do nothing different, they're going to go backwards. So we feel like it's a pretty compelling case to say you got to look at how you're doing things differently, because the labor shortage is not going to abate anytime soon. Right. So, but thanks for your comments.
Yeah. No, thank
James?
you. Great job.
Yeah, Teresa?
So because we've been through this many times on many tasks, I would just say, really focus in on deeper, smaller scope, actionable items, measurable, and implementation. This workforce development is a huge, I mean, it's flowing throughout all sectors, right? It touches on childcare, and you mentioned it in the, I read through the information, childcare and housing and all of that. So trying to keep it small and recognizing the larger agencies, what the state is doing, what the Department of Education is working on. You don't have all of that information yet. So if you're sitting in the space of small to medium-sized business, what are you trying to implement, or what are you trying to do versus creating talent pipelines for them? You know, they might get overwhelmed. You're going to give them a huge task, and then they're going to be like, I'm out. This is too much. So just small bites and giving them pieces that leads them down the path, I would think would be the approach.
Great. Thank you for those comments.
Anything else for the good of the order?
James, I just have a couple super quick updates. I started typing it in the chat, but this is for all of your business members and constituents that you work with. I just wanted to make sure, I'm sorry if you already did this. I always have a standing staff meeting Tuesday morning, so I'm always about 10 minutes late, but I don't want to make sure that you all saw that that the OSHA emergency temporary standards mandate was lifted by the federal courts, the hold on that. So this is the one that requires employers with 100 employees or more to have their employees vaccinated or tested weekly. We're thinking this might go before the Supreme Court, and there might be another stay placed, but we'll be monitoring that, and I'll send you updates on that. But if it doesn't, there's no further stay, everyone will need to be in compliance by January 10th on this. Also, the Homeland Security announced that they're going to have about 20,000 more H-2Bs available for employers that are looking to hire on or before March 31st, 2022. So this was a recent expansion, and so there's an additional H-2Bs available for anyone looking for workforce housing. And just the last one is economic injury disaster loan closes at the end of the calendar year. That also includes the emergency advance grant for anyone who's eligible. So yeah, so those are just a couple of quick announcements. I just wanted to get those out there. And again, we're starting in the new year. We'll be working on the federal budget and Build Back Better. So.
Okay, thanks for the update.
Sure.
Any other final comments, questions? All right, seeing none, everybody, happy holidays, happy new year, and we will see you on the 4th.